The 1930s dark wood radio sat in Grandpa's basement for decades. There were fond memories of Christmas when Aunt Claire would lay that fake green tinsel wrapped around lights on top of it. We would sit around and open presents on the rug in front. Even then, I felt there was something wrong with it, and as I got older, I started to see Aunt Claire's decorations as an attempt to calm her own unease. It wasn't until I had my own children, though, that I truly understood its horror. When he died well into his 90s, the will was clear. The house would go to the oldest, and any personal effects would be split between the rest. It was upon my turn going through the house to see what I wanted that I decided to look at that old radio with adult eyes. It was in very good shape, as though it had just yesterday been assembled. Its dark stain was still glossy, and there was only one barely noticeable scratch from one year when I tried to climb on top of it to get away from the dog. As I stood there in the finished basement, trying to decide why I felt so uneasy, I reached to turn it on for the first time. My husband was very into antiques, and he had asked about it before. Just as my fingers reached the cold brass hardware, I heard my aunt's startled gasp pull me from my curiosity, and I spun around to see her clutching the door frame. Please don't turn that on. She was trembling, and I went over to her, helping her to the couch. Auntie, what's wrong? If you don't want me to turn it on, it's okay. I was just curious. Will it short out, or... I could not imagine her reaction to one simple action being so dramatic. It wasn't like her. She caught her breath and looked at the floor. It makes an awful noise. It sounds like screaming. It tunes into stations in a language I've never heard. It's horrible. Don't take it. Please just leave it where it is. If it weren't so heavy, I'd unplug it forever. I frowned as I looked up at it. It can't be that heavy. I can get Mike to come move it today after work if you want. I'm sure he can get to the plug. He was asking about it last year at the Christmas dinner, so I thought I might take it. Aunt Claire took a deep breath, eyes welling, as she looked up at me. Don't you feel it? I don't know where it came from. He was so proud of that thing. He would sit down here for hours listening to that awful sound like he enjoyed it. When I moved in to take care of him a few months ago, I finally convinced him to stop. I shivered. I do feel uneasy around it. I wonder if it's just because it's in this basement. Let me take it. Mike can look at it and maybe try to fix it. It might just be picking up weird signals from the base. You know, they talk in code. I was trying to make her feel better, but I was making myself feel worse. She got up slowly and looked at it. I really don't want to keep it, but I worry about sending it with you. Will you keep it away from the kids? At the time, I thought she was worried they would destroy it, if I had only known. After a bit more convincing, I called my husband, and he got it home with little effort. Once away from my aunt, who was thoroughly starting to freak me out, I turned it on. At first, it was just static, but as I played with the dials, something came into tune, and it was a sound that touched me in a visceral way. I felt like crying and laughing and throwing up all at the same time. I quickly turned it off, and Mike was suddenly next to me as I was clinging to the floor. Honey, are you okay? What was that? I couldn't stop shivering for a long moment as flashbacks from my childhood raced before my eyes. It's the radio. I sat up and looked at it. From my place on the floor, I could see it the way I did when I was small. Oh my God, it wasn't a nightmare. I got up slowly. Honey? He got up as well, very concerned as he wrapped an arm around me. Grandpa never told me where he got it, but what he heard from it is not what everyone else does. My husband, to his credit, listened to this disjointed rambling as he slowly walked me to the bedroom. What are you talking about, honey? You're not making sense, and I'm worried. I sighed as I sat on the end of the bed. When I was maybe 5 or 6, I spent summers at Grandma and Grandpa's while my father worked. He would wait until everyone was in bed before going down to his office. He would turn on the radio while he did his paperwork. I remember Grandma getting so angry at him. that awful noise, but I didn't hear that. I heard voices. I heard people talking and music. You know, like a normal radio, except I shook the remaining dizziness from my head. It spoke to me directly, and for some reason, Grandpa could hear it too. Like I did. We have to keep it locked up. We can't let Lucy or Duke hear it. Without hesitation, he moved it into his office and left it unplugged, just in case. I didn't finish telling him, because in my memory, the radio would have me speak to many people, mostly other children, but sometimes adults. The last night I heard it, I was talking to a little boy and a little girl, siblings, Lucy and Duke, and they said they had to go because their house was on fire and Mommy wasn't waking up.